So as soon as I saw the trailer for A Quiet Place, I was hooked. I just wanted more. I thought it looked fantastic, and so ultimately, it was even up there as one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Right up there with Infinity War, if you can believe it. So it's safe to say that I had some high expectations, but I have some good news. A Quiet Place met them and more. I'm Jack Fitzpatrick, and this is my review of A Quiet Place. So A Quiet Place brings us into this dangerous world in which the family that we're focused on must struggle through silence in order to survive. The entire premise is a perfect setup for this kind of movie, as even if they make the faintest of sounds, what is out there in the wild will most likely be able to hear them. And here, on premise alone, A Quiet Place is extremely engaging. I bought into their concerns and was terrified for them. And not just any film like this can make you buy in so defiantly and so quickly. A Quiet Place is simply outstanding for these reasons and more. So I want to not give away way too much information about every detail here, so forgive me if I tiptoe, but one thing that I think that you would probably want to know before going into the movie is that because of the plot, there is barely any dialogue throughout, and instead the main family of the film communicate largely through sign language. This is a bold move for a movie to make, as you know, Mr. Numbnut's normal moviegoer idiot man is probably going to get bored. But if you ask me, this decision paid the hell off, and it's quite remarkable what the film is able to do without typical conversation. It's here where I really have to praise the hell out of this small cast, as each member does their role to an extreme level of believability. Each actor featured gives off some surprisingly emotive performances throughout, despite minimal dialogue. You can see the fear in Emily Blunt's eyes, the determination in John Krasinski's face, and you can understand the frustration and fears of the children in the film too, each playing their part incredibly well. But it's not just in terms of emotiveness that the film does a great job of, despite the lack of talking. I also have to say that A Quiet Place does a fantastic job of portraying character and personality. We could see that the mother of the film was scared, yes, but not only that, she was determined to give her kids a good life, despite circumstance, as she tries to be a little bit goofy from time to time and is clearly very loving. The father was serious, masculine, and protective, and the daughter is all about wanting to prove herself as she grows up in this harsh environment, causing conflict with those around her. And the son is terrified due to the horrors that he's witnessed in his short time. You understand these people, they feel real, and they're relatable. And it's crazy that much understanding can come out of mainly gestures, signs, and visual performances. I appreciate this movie so much for that. But we all know what we're really in this movie for, the horror. And so does A Quiet Place live up to what its trailers promised us? Well, I'd say hell yeah. Even if it was a little bit different from what I might have expected, this film had a perfect recipe for jump scares. But I love that it doesn't overdo it, but instead creates tension respectfully and legitimately, all while still staying consistently intense throughout. In fact, A Quiet Place just unrelentingly doesn't stop. There is just one problem after the other. And once you think that they've finally made their peace, something unexpected happens yet again. This is another thing that I really appreciate about this movie though. It still manages to remain unpredictable. As bad things are obviously going to happen when you're only half an hour into the movie or whatever, well, you don't know exactly when and where the problems are going to happen. A Quiet Place is inventive with its issues. It's not just always the typical stuff going on here. Backing up for these is that the characters are actually intelligent people to an extent. They have their flaws and surely make mistakes, but we can see that they use logic to solve problems and that they know their way around certain areas of dealing with things. I appreciate that they use realistic precaution and are prepared for emergencies. Speaking of intelligence, another thing that A Quiet Place smartly gets right is its trust in its own audience. A Quiet Place understands how to use plot and exposition. It builds its world, history, and characters naturally, without explaining it all to you, without voiceover, without being too obvious, basically without shoving information down your throat. A Quiet Place very much shows rather than tells, and never feels cheap. Perhaps the best element of the film though is its sound design. A Quiet Place uses sound and the lack thereof super effectively. It demonstrates early on how sensitive and key the idea of sound is in its world, and that the faintest of noise can induce danger. We now understand where we are, and it really does bring you into survival mode, looking out for potential threats and noisemakers. Now don't get me wrong, it's not just about the sounds. A Quiet Place is one hell of a visual masterpiece too, and is shot with some goddamn competence and clearly has artistic eye behind it. It's truly beautiful in a horrific way, but it's goddamn nothing without sound. It's reliant on it. And it just wouldn't be the same without it. Even if a large portion of the film is fairly quiet, A Quiet Place understands restraint, and that's a good thing. Speaking of sound, A Quiet Place also has these really nice sweet moments that are actually pretty damn touching throughout. And to back this up comes this nice, soft and reoccurring theme. The score is definitely something the music nerds of film are gonna love about this. And even though this may not be my area of expertise, it was definitely an effective tool in creating tension, touching scenes, and complementing the horror and action when it did occur. John Krasinski really set himself up with a hell of a challenge with this one, as he directs himself and his wife, a deaf girl, and another young child. But boy did they all really make it work. In this love child of 10 Cloverfield Lane, I Am Legend, and The Last of Us comes a whole lot of almost sickening tension, impressive technical aspects such as sound and cinematography, and some goddamn powerful pieces of acting from each and every actor featured. It's intimidating during its darker scenes, feels helpless when things are going bad, but also consistently reminds us of the humanity with these characters, and makes us like them and understand them despite minimal dialogue. A Quiet Place does its job so well that I really don't think I'm going to be able to get it out of my head. I truly hope it's not one of those movies that just gets forgotten about in like 4 months or whatever, because it really deserves so much more than that. I loved it. Fuck, I loved A Quiet Place. Also, lastly, I just wanted to talk about how hilarious it is if you see this movie in a packed cinema, because it was almost like a challenge in awkward public quietness. Like, I was sitting right next to this guy, and I'm trying to be quiet as I get my, drink and everything. And so, as soon as the scenes got quiet, everybody's trying to be quiet, hold off any noise. But as soon as the music began to swell up, or the noise became even somewhat consistent, we'd all kind of like sigh in relief and go to our snacks and shit. It was kind of hilarious. So, if you do see this in a packed cinema, that is one kind of pro, that it's a bit funny. But my audience wasn't really too bad. It wasn't enough to wreck the experience or anything. Honestly, everybody was actually pretty respectful, so that's good. Okay, that's all I have to say.